Blake, why don't you ever return my calls?
You can't return calls you don't miss.
Welcome to the ChurchGear podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who can't help but be as communicative as robotly possible, and I'm here with my co-host who will call, but he ain't answering, Toby Walters.
I am the phone robot. You are talking to AI, but you don't know it.
Yep, this sounds like Toby. Man, I was shocked that this is AI.
So, Blake, do you know that you've probably talked to AI already and you haven't known it?
What do you mean?
There are apps out there. There are softwares for like making phone calls or customer support that are fully AI, but you cannot tell the difference.
Impossible.
Yeah.
I know. I'm a marketer, Toby. I know people. I know emotion.
I see a kind of like a YouTube series coming up, a video where we have you talking to a real person and an AI and see if you can tell the difference. Kind of like the Coke and Pepsi challenge.
That sounds amazing.
Yes. Okay, so I'm very excited to see whether our guest is AI today. So our buddies at DiGiCo, they have at least one incredible house of worship rep. His name is Kyle.
Oh yeah, we love Kyle.
We had him on the podcast a while back, and he is phenomenal. He used to mix for Tomlin. He's just a brilliant guy and super nice and responds.
Very attractive.
Yeah, very attractive. He responds to all our messages.
We love him.
Yeah. So Blake, this other rep that works with DiGiCo that
I didn't even know there was one.
I know. He's pretty much how long has he ghosted you now?
Oh man, so long that my wife knows about it. She's like, "You have a ghost." I'm like, "I do."
So we see these guys at all our conferences. Like every conference we go to, our DiGiCo friends are there.
We high five and we hug until we get to this ghost because you can't hug a ghost.
Yeah. And so I remember specifically at the FILO conference a couple of years ago, they hadn't met you yet, but I knew them. And so they invited me. They said, "Hey, Toby, come over to our booth and check out. We've built a secret lounge."
Ooh, the secret booth.
And so there are, for FILO, it's hosted at Willow Creek. And there are kind of these lounging couch benches in the lobbies, but they get pushed back against the walls, and then booths get put in front of them. Well, DiGiCo had one pushed back behind their booth, and so they kind of had this secret bench lounge behind their booth.
The DiGi
booth. And so they were, mixing drinks, doing pedicures back there, all the things you expect.
I saw a couple front flips.
Yeah, in the secret DiGiCo lounge, and I invited you to come over and check this thing out. So you came over, and you started, I think this is the first time you met these two DiGiCo boys. And
the boy and the ghost.
Yes. I said to them, so Blake is a character from the Office on TV. And they kind of looked at me, and then eventually I said, he is Dwight Schrute. And you just saw their faces oh my gosh, he is Dwight Schrute. And then you said three more things, and they're just dying laughing because everything you said, you didn't mean to be Dwight Schrute. You just are Dwight Schrute.
Am I Dwight Schrute, or were they just humoring you, Toby?
No,
they might have been humoring you.
You have done karate demonstrations in our offices.
Taekwondo, and only at your request.
And I remember my dad texted me, this was 2 years after you had been working here. And he said, "Oh my gosh, I just figured out who Blake is. He's Dwight Schrute from The Office." I'm like, "Dad, you got to keep up." So this ghost from DiGiCo, what's crazy is he and I have gone to, so he used to go to fellowship with you, Blake. Did you know this?
Well, how would I know he's a ghost?
And now he goes to Church of the City. So I see him on Sundays a lot. And then I even saw
to me,
him.
That's the Holy Ghost you're
that's
seeing.
the Holy Ghost. Okay. Well, I saw him at lunch on Sunday at Kava. I went to Kava, and there he was. So I warned him that this is just going to be a public shaming for him. And I'm very excited to just get into this.
And here to sit for his exorcism, the national sales manager for Group 1, and since nobody knows what that means, the most transparent ghost in church tech, also a DiGiCo guy, Ryan Shelton. Ryan, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much, both of you. And yes, I deserved all of that. And also, Outlook does not like whatever you're sending to set up invites.
Yeah, he was like, y'all's emails keep getting flagged. And I was like, do we have a dirty email? Do we have a bad inbox?
He said you kept going to his junk folder, and then you said something wildly inappropriate in response.
That's allegedly.
My personal Gmail has no problems with you. That's all I know.
So Ryan, I'd be nervous at the next conference that you and Blake are both going to be at because these Taekwondo demonstrations in the office might be directed at you.
No, he came on the show now.
That's true. We haven't finished the show yet, so we'll
that's
see.
true, too.
Yeah,
That's true.
Okay, well, Ryan, I must say, you're a very good sport. I don't know if we've roasted anybody that hard in our entire lives, but no one's ever, ghosted us.
taking like what, a year or something more than when we spoke.
Ryan,
So, yeah.
I got Matt Chandler on this podcast before I could get you. So you should, take that to heart. Like you are even a harder get.
All right.
Let's do our 5 truths and a lie, our weekly game where we introduce the guests and you get to know a little about them, and me and Toby see if we can sniff out their lie.
All right.
Gross. You're probably smelling the burp you let out right before we hit record.
That was like 7 minutes ago. That's dissipated.
7 minutes of smelling it. Number 1, I have rappelled from the catwalk at large mega churches approximately 50 feet to the floor.
That sounds like a very production-y thing to do.
That reminds me of when you and me and Griff were up in the Highlands, and that scared the crap out of me.
And that's like half as high as some other ones.
Oh my gosh. Number 2, I have run a 5K and completed a team sprint triathlon.
Now, a 5K is like, I used to run those in elementary school, so I'm like, is he bragging on that? Come on, man.
Bragger. Number 3, I am a classically trained pianist and have performed, not even gonna try that.
Rachmaninoff's?
Rachmaninoff.
Say it in
Sure.
American.
You ever heard of that guy?
I like how you
pretty famous.
You said pianist, though, correctly, which I was a little nervous
It's almost
about.
like I've been in trouble before.
Yes.
Prelude in C sharp minor, op 3, number 2.
Wow.
This is fun.
Number 4, I have a 16 handicap for golf.
Before I read the whole thing, I thought it said, I have a 16 handicap for God. And I'm like, can you, like, as a Christian, can you start with a handicap? Because I want a handicap in my Christianity.
Well, if you opened your Bible, we have infinite handicap with Jesus, Toby.
Perfect.
Number 5, I've recorded and produced an album released on all streaming platforms. He's coming for you, Toby.
All streaming platforms? There's got to be like thousands out there. Come on.
Number 6, and finally, while an avid firearms guy and marksman, I have never been hunting. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, Avid makes firearms? I was really confused trying to read that ahead of time.
There's a subscription that goes with it, though.
Oh, your bullets won't come out of the chamber if you haven't hit your subscription.
He is throwing some bullets at Avid right now, too.
Well, Toby, I have a surprise for you.
Okay, what's your surprise?
I already know the lie.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to be honest
All right.
and disqualify myself.
Great.
And here's your chance to get points, and I can't even get them.
Okay, I'm going to say that he's scared of guns because I'm a little bit scared of guns. So I'm going to say he's not an avid fireman, firearms guy.
I am
avid fireman.
I am also a little scared of guns. All right, Ryan, Toby's locked in. Is that your lie?
No.
Yes.
You don't get the point, Blake.
But the guest does. All 3 of us get points.
So I suck at golf. Like hard. Like I had to Google what like an average handicap is for golf, and apparently that's an average handicap for golf. And I'm nowhere close to that. If we played a game yesterday, Toby, you and me, we'd still be finishing. Like I'm that bad.
I often ask golfers what would I played 2 times in my life, and I'm terrible. Like, what would my handicap be? And so did Google tell you like what your handicap might actually be?
No, I literally just Google what's an average handicap for somebody.
Does that mean like
golfer.
16 strokes?
Over par? Yes.
Okay, so if you're playing Tiger Woods, it's kind of like Tiger's got to spot you 16 strokes.
Oh
no, that would be 16 strokes over what the course is expecting for par.
Okay.
Tiger Woods is probably going to be
several under.
It's 20 under, probably.
All right.
Yeah.
So he's 36 times better than you.
Yes.
That
And
makes sense.
36 is pretty close to 50, which is approximately the amount of distance you did from the catwalk. So tell us about rappelling at catwalks. Anything fun there?
Yeah, absolutely. We found out the security guys had installed a new camera in the sanctuary to watch everything. That was cool.
So you got caught.
Oh yeah. A good friend of mine. We both got into production early on, volunteers at church. That's where we met. Still great friends to this day. And at some point in life, we got into rappelling and climbing and all that kind of stuff. And we were like, hey, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's just like a clean rappel, like, no wall, no anything. So yeah, we hooked up to the catwalk railing, which we doubled it up to another railing, just in case like it didn't hold both of our weights. And then, when we went down and nice smooth rappel, nobody hurt anything. And then as we were unclipping at the bottom, security guard walks in and says, "Hey, that looked pretty good. You guys know about our new camera in the back of the room, right? Where you can see everything and even when the lights are off, right?" So yeah. Anyway,
were you on staff or just volunteer?
Volunteer.
Okay. So what are they going to do? Fire you?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please stop serving and setting up stuff for us. So,
Were you like, is this your early 20s, early teens?
Yeah. Early 20s.
Toby, this reminds me of when we were up in Fort Wayne to go to Sweetwater, and we were visiting a church first, and they were like, "Oh, let me show you our new, like, it was either LED wall or something," and they go to play it, and they play a Rickroll, because they're like, "Well, that'll be fun." Well, they had also forgotten, Ryan, that they had some new tech that circulated that song throughout the entire campus. A pastor was on an emotional call right as Rickroll got blared.
Oh, no.
Yes. These things happen. Production guys and their toys. So speaking of production guys and their toys, tell us about being a gunsmith, a gunsman. What do professionals call it?
I grew up in Memphis.
Oh, so just self-production.
That's what you need to know.
It's so dark.
Had a group of friends. Once again, same guys from production, and we decided when we were 21, we were like, yeah, let's be responsible gun owners. So we went and took a course together, and got into all of that. And thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've just kind of kept going with that. Enjoy that very much as being a father of 3 kiddos will allow me the discretionary income to actually spend on that stuff because it's expensive. And both just actually going out and shooting and getting new guns. So yeah, that's been fun. But my favorite story from getting my handgun permit was they had us go around the class and just introduce yourself, who you are, why you're here, why you're doing your thing. And so we all introduced ourselves. And then there was one guy at the front who basically said something along the lines of, "Dude, they held me up at gunpoint and they took my rims."
Wow.
And we were like, wow, man, that's intense. Like we've never been, held up at gunpoint or anything. And I can imagine what he's feeling. And so anyway, fast forward to lunch and we're all piling into our car to go grab some food. And then this 1992 Crown Victoria rusted out with like 26-inch chrome rims comes rolling past with the guy inside of it. And I was like, oh, dude, he got his rims back or got some new ones. Anyway, yeah, great times.
Is the era of rims past? Like, is that still a thing?
I think it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blake, do you have rims on your Nissan Rogue?
No, but I do have a ton of bird crap on it because I parked in the very back of the ChurchGear parking lot over the weekend, and it filled it up.
This is becoming a real thing here. Like, there's too many people working at ChurchGear now, and there's no parking anymore.
We're going to have to actually fire some people.
Yes.
Or build some more parking spaces.
Yes.
Or Frank can get his trailer out of the parking spot.
Is that Frank's trailer?
He left a little... He left a little trailer. It just sits there.
We're going to start ghosting your paycheck like Ryan Shelton ghosted us.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan. So when you're not ghosting us, you're being a real boy. And no, man, that transition was awful.
Let me try that again, Blake.
Toby,
let me handle this for you. Ryan, you're a man among boys. You're a legend among cautionary tales. Give us a snapshot of your background in production and what led to your role at DiGiCo today.
The very professional. Thank you, Toby.
That's how it's done.
So I started volunteering at a mega church when I was 11. My dad actually knew the dad of the guy who was audio production. And I was just a nerd who loved gear. And so
as opposed to today.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so 11 years old, just kind of sitting, hanging out with the guys, asking really dumb questions and just kind of learning everything. And just like I said earlier, some of my best friends still from those days, they were around the same time, just kind of within a year or two, we all started volunteering, hanging out, basically doing all the stuff they didn't want to do, right? Running cables, climbing under the stage, under the choir risers, up in the catwalks once we were old enough and they trusted us not to kill ourselves up there. So yeah, I mean, we ran all over the place, and this was like, 90s. So, budgets for youth rooms were like just leftover gear that, they had used in other rooms and stuff like that. So that's where we cut our teeth on old Mackie 1604, VLZs, and actually probably wasn't even a VLZ at that point.
Yeah.
And, a couple old DBX 160s, and lucky to have a reverb unit. And, I would, play in a worship band and bass, and I'd go back and dial stuff in from back there somehow simultaneously doing both. So yeah, that's how I got into all of this. And
were you a Bellevue Baptist or somewhere else?
Yeah, I was a Bellevue Baptist. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now I don't know what the if there's like a statute of limitations on,
we'll find out.
Repelling out of the sanctuary. So
yeah.
Anyway,
this still Pastor Rogers there or somebody else?
No, Pastor Rogers passed away. I think it's been almost 20 years now. Okay. I think it's like 19 years or something like that. So Steve Gaines is pastor there now.
Isn't Bellevue famous for like they've only had 3 pastors the entire history of the church?
Yeah.
That's just an amazing feat, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they're only 7 years old, Toby. So it's actually.
Yes, exactly. So going back to your beginning, like you said, you were 11-year-old just hanging out and, playing with toys. You were the volunteer. You were the new kid on the block trying to figure out, and somebody had to teach you how to do this stuff. Like, let's talk training. Let's talk about, some of the tech skills, some of the basics and how that should be approached. And also, I think soft skills is becoming more and more and more a necessity to teach these people as they're going. And I know audio is kind of your wheelhouse. Let's talk that specifically. Yep. Like, where should TDs start when considering new volunteers, and what are some of the basics that can't be overlooked?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we had at the time, of course, older gear. It wasn't even on anybody's radar, or really the technology didn't exist to be able to do what we just refer to as virtual sound check now, right? Recording every single channel separately of the band, being able to play that back and be able to mix that back. So, it took years and years and years of me asking questions, being able to get my hands on gear during a rehearsal, be able to ask why, like, what is a knee on a compressor? That sounds like just like you made something up, right? Yeah. And like let alone be able to just sit there and move the dial to actually hear what something like a threshold even does. And so, it took years and years and years. And then, really it was just time in the, the youth room where they just really didn't care if there was feedback or, other stuff going on in there. Right. So there were a lot of lessons learned in that. So for me, like the idea of just being able to come in like after school or after a class or something like that and be able to mix the band without the band having to be there, without the risk of feedback, and just like grasp these concepts. I mean, it would have been just months instead of years of time. So what I would recommend to any production director, that if you're not capitalizing on virtual sound check specifically for training volunteers, you are missing out. Like, that is just such an amazing tool. Pretty much every console nowadays, all the way down to very, very affordable, the X32s, M32s, stuff like that in the world, like they have ways for you to do this. You may need to buy a Dante or Matty or a USB card or something like that to go into these consoles to be able to multi-track them. But I mean, did you see Harrison just released, or rather like a couple months ago released Live Tracks software, kind of the spinoff of Tracks Live from Waves, $15. No subscription, no anything. And it just uses your native audio interface or whatever you're connected to. Can record up to like thousands of channels, far beyond what our interfaces can do. It's like $15 and you can just record everything and play it back. Now, I will say what I've observed, and you guys may know this as well, but if you just play back audio and you come in there to mix, everybody tends to just go, oh, I want to make this kick drum sound amazing, and I want to make this vocal sound amazing, and all that kind of stuff, which is great, and that's important, and that's fun. But what I have found is if you record video and you find a DAW, like just like a static wide shot of the stage, right? GoPro, iPhone, whatever. And then you can import that to most things. So like Apple's Logic Pro, Pro Tools does it. I think Presonus and Reaper and all those others do it as well. Throw in video with it from the service, and then put some sort of monitor or screen in front of the volunteer. So like, make this purposeful training. Like, this is not just playtime on the console, because the vast majority of what somebody needs to learn getting into audio is hitting a cue. And yes, we can all argue about how great the kick drum sounded on Sunday morning. And, those 2 floor toms the drummer had, for that big opener, were those fat and in your face. Yeah, that's great. But really, really important beyond any of that is just turning up the microphone when the person walks up on stage. Yeah. So whether that's mute, unmute, whether that's turning it down, making sure the passer's off when they shouldn't, it's just the basics of audio. And when you have a visual element tied to it, I find people hold themselves accountable to going, oh, the band's walking up, or, oh, the pastor's walking up. And those are the things that just I feel like technology is there. It's affordable. It's so easy that if you're not taking advantage of this, you're just slowing the process down for these kids, for these volunteers getting in.
Yeah, I remember, back in my day, which I don't think was too far off from your day, it was, I don't know if it was a generational thing or just the reality of the equipment, but it was like, before you step foot in that booth, you understand this equipment is holy ground. And I literally got my hand slapped for doing something that, was not the way the old guy wanted it done. And
did he slap you in slow motion because he was old?
Absolutely. And so, this day and age, for like a DiGiCo product, like put a kid in front of a 338, like as long as he doesn't have a drink, it's like, well, go wild, kid. I'll just reset everything.
Absolutely.
And so just the opportunity to play with these toys, and I would tend to think a 338 is a whole lot more fun than the Mackie 1604. Like that was fun back in the day, but it's kind of like playing the original Pong versus, Fortnite that my kid's playing now. Like it is so fun to get your hands on these tools, and just the ability, like you said, to use virtual sound check, to use a live video feed, and just spend time playing around. Like that's a huge advantage.
And if the kid has a drink, let's call his parents, because I'm concerned. I'm concerned.
Yes. I mean, like a soda, Blake.
Sure.
Gosh. Get your mind out of the gutter.
I'm trying to keep kids out of the gutter.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, Blake.
What are some of the like people skills, soft skills that even, as teenagers, as kids out of the youth group come into the booth, like what are some of those things that you think should day one start to be taught?
That's a great question. I think the aspect of community and serving, right? It's that there's a whole lot of people. You mentioned them earlier. You mentioned that old guy that slapped your hand, right? There are people who have been serving there for decades, and understanding that you're the new person, right? I mean, this probably exists in any business and any job, any career you're going to walk into. You too, Blake, is understanding that there are more senior people. Because it says CEO on its title and all that, but yes. So understanding, one, that you can learn from these people, right? So keeping a humble attitude, but two, like you're there to serve. Like what does the church need? What does the worship director want? What do they need to make them feel more comfortable? And then the other aspect is communication. It's obviously usually one of the worst parts for most like real tech nerds. And I would include myself in that. You can ask my wife.
Email response time.
I was trying not to interrupt him. I was like, how dare you talk to us about communication, Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's still a work in progress, still learning, but communicating with the people on stage, right? So often we just talk to ourselves, talk to the people around us in our booth, and we don't engage with the people on stage. I got a degree in recording technology from the University of Memphis, and one of the big things they pushed, and one of the big experiences I had, was making the artists in the studio feel comfortable. They're usually in there by themselves. They're all isolated, bunch of mics around them, more of a clinical environment, and just being able to have a dialogue, communication with them going on, it helps a lot. So communication as a soft skill, obviously some of us haven't learned that lesson completely. Just understanding you're there to serve is, I think, one of the biggest ones.
So I'm just now thinking of, so with your position with DiGiCo and Clang and other products, I'm sure that you get a lot of customers calling up, asking you the same questions over and over and over. And you're thinking like, I showed you how to do this 2 weeks ago and it's still an issue. And so you have to put on that teacher hat, that patience hat. Yes. Do you see that as something that TDs are naturally good with at new volunteers? Or is that something that, staff and tech directors need to learn to just say like, hey, I'm going to have patience with this person as they ask the same questions over and over?
And can you ship that patience hat to Toby?
Yeah. No on that one. But two, I do actually see that as one of kind of the common traits and personality traits within production directors. It's that, that education hat, that teacher hat that says, I can say this one more time and I can do it, patiently and explain what's going on and what you did wrong and why this isn't working or giving you the results you want. So absolutely, that's a key soft skill for a production director. Absolutely. And the other one is just building community. Like when you come to volunteer with audio, video, or lighting, you're typically, those people aren't always in a community group. They're not always, it's serving in other areas. And, tech can be pretty isolating because you're sitting, in the audio booth by yourself. You're manning a camera by yourself. You're at the lighting console running ProPresenter or whatever it is. And, being able to foster a sense of community and connect those people and help those volunteers feel plugged into the church. I think both of those are pretty important.
You also get to see a lot of churches around the country, probably around the world. Do you see like common pitfalls as far as, I've seen this a lot where somebody will set up their system the way they want it, but it doesn't make any sense for teaching other people to use it, and then they leave, and then people have to figure out, why in the world did you set that up? Do you see that as a common pitfall? Do you have any specific examples of something that TDs like to do over and over again that you see as just way overcomplicating?
Yeah. So on a very tangible physical side of it, probably, I think it was 2015, we launched the SD5. One of the first ones we sold in the US went to a church, and I won't say who it is. Technical director is no longer there. But what was awesome was he actually reached out to me through the dealer early on, and he was like, "Hey, I need to know how tall the console is." And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? You want to be able to see over it and set heights and all that stuff. And he's like, no. I need the fader height. How high is the fader to the bottom of the console? And I was like, this is a very odd request. I don't think I've ever had anybody ask for this before. So I got him that information. I went there to go do the training. So flew in, drove in to do the training. And when I walked in, I figured out what he was asking for. So the guy is like 6'5". So he's really, really tall. And most of his entire life, he's had to bend over to mix at the console. And so when they were getting this new console, he was like, hey, this is my chance. So he like stood up straight, put his arms out where he would be comfortable mixing, and then measured that height to the floor. And of course, did the math from there to where this counter was going to be set at. Now, the funny part was I'm about 6'2", so not nearly as tall. This is rounding up in case anybody's wondering. And then so I walk in and I'm like, man, this is great. Like my back can be straight. It's very just comfortable to mix at. And then I thought, are all your volunteers this tall? And the answer is no, they're not, and not anywhere close to it. And I was like, so what are you doing? And he just goes, oh, they're a former Baptist church, kind of non-denom now. But he's like, we got the box. And so there was a 3x3 step box, that had been lacquered, and had, of course, right.
Yeah, it's got to look holy still.
It's correct. And so you could drag that out from under the console, and you could stand on that if you were, vertically challenged to mix. So, but that just kind of encapsulates what you're talking about. Like he personalized it for himself and not for the people that are going to be using that on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. Now, obviously, current thing I just recommend to everybody, and you've probably seen a bunch of them, just like get height adjustable desk now, right? That's a simple solution for that thing. But it wasn't at the time, and thankfully now we're there. But yes, you can continue on with that exact same train of thought to creating these complicated workflows for audio signal chains, that it comes in here to this analog piece first, and then it hits into a console, then it goes to an insert point, and then it goes to waves, and then it goes to this bus, to this bus, to this bus, to out to this thing, and back in. And Kyle, actually, the better of us two, as you've previously mentioned,
I love you, Kyle.
Was absolutely. And he went on, actually, before, he was just a contractor with us and he wasn't full time, but he went to go help a church that was having a bunch of problems. And they said they didn't like the way the DiGiCo console sounds. And that was a bit odd. I don't think we've ever heard that. And so Kyle went out to go sort this problem out. And he called me later. He was like, dude, you would not believe what they have going on here. And so the particular person who was the problem had left the room, and the other audio guys go, okay, we know you're like Chris Tomlin's guy. He's like, what would you do? And so he literally just defaulted the console, put in high pass filters, and then just sent it all to one bus and just started mixing. And they were like, that's incredible. It's incredible. And the thing, the church invested in technology. They had amazing equipment, both outboard, plugins, DiGiCo SD12 at the time, all this kind of stuff. And, the worship director walked through and said, what did you guys do to our PA? And they were ready to buy another PA. And it was all just kind of the holes that they dug for themselves, making their workflows so complicated. And, if you're trying to have a volunteer walk in and do something, I had another church that wanted to use all outboard mic pre's and tie them into the DiGiCo console. That's great. Maybe you like the sound of that better and whatever. Okay, that's awesome. But the benefit that you're going to get, that 10% difference, that whatever that number is, compared to what the workflow is going to be for the people who have to use it, and then are the people in the audience even going to be able to tell a difference? You just have to ask those questions.
I think there's a consistent reality with a lot of production people are extremely intelligent, extremely technically minded, and they need to remember just because you can doesn't mean you should. I know, it's fun to make things super complicated because that's the way your mind works. That's the way your preferences work. But just to ask, well, how is this intended to be used? What's the manufacturer default setting? Because oftentimes just take all the EQ out, take all the processing out, throw the faders up, and see what you got and start with that rather than starting with, all right, let's get 47 plugins on every single channel. And
absolutely,
there are a lot of toys these days.
One of the weirdest selling features that I usually talk to most churches about when I'm doing a DiGiCo demo is the fact that you can actually reduce the amount of channels that are shown on the console. You can reduce the amount of auxes and the amount of groups to just what's needed, or what's needed plus a spare or something like that. And I always recommend this to them. I was like, do you have a youth that meets on Wednesday nights? Do you have funerals and weddings and, a staff meeting or, something that goes on during the week? And it's build a session that literally has everything that person could possibly need on one layer. And that may be 5 microphones and an aux end for a wedge and your master and CD playback, whatever you're using, computer playback. I realize what year it is. And so, that just put it on one layer. You don't have to look at everything. To your point, we like to make things complicated. We like the way things work because there are benefits to these things, right? To these workflows. There are incredible engineers on the road who get to hone this stuff and they come up with the most insane workflows and they're awesome, incredible mixes. But yes, if I'm walking in, I've never seen your system, I'm a volunteer, can I get audio out of there? And yeah, that's something you got to ask yourself.
I always love when we have Gene Kim on, and I feel like he can't help himself, but he always wants to figure out what's the least amount of gear I can make a great mix with. And I love that mentality because I think,
Toby, we sell gear. Toby, we sell gear. You do need some gear.
But you can so quickly get into the mindset because I've been there myself. What's the most amount of gear I can, get to make a great mix with? And
apparently a warehouse full.
A warehouse full. Yes, we have a warehouse full.
So the commonality between production directors are specifically the person mixing every Sunday, if there is one at that church. So if you don't have a volunteer contract position, you're mixing. And touring engineers is you're in the same space, you're with the same people, and that's when you start going, there's this thing that's bugging me, right? So whether it's a sibilance that a person has and you need a de-esser. Okay, so we throw a de-esser in. Okay, then there's this, body and a microphone thing. And okay, now we can try out a different microphone, or maybe we don't have the budget for that, but I can get a plug-in, a dynamic EQ or something like that, right? So then they just start trying to fix those things that they're in, right? I mean, this is their day-to-day, their week-to-week. And, it's obviously amplified when you're on the road because then it's 2 to 3 to 4 shows a week with the same artist, the same songs, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, absolutely, you should try to hone it and you should try to fix those problems. But yes, take the step back and realize that, one, is anybody likely to ever hear this a difference here? And is that what I'm making more complicated to use for somebody else that's just going to walk in?
All right. So talk to us specifically about some of your products, DiGiCo and Clang. And when are you guys going to release a console with AI so we don't need volunteers anymore?
Or a console built into an adjustable desk so people don't have to step up on boxes.
So Bellevue did go with some Quantum 7s. And so I recommended the Uplift desk for them. And funny enough, I'd never done this before, specifically with those two products. But if you take the legs off, you can actually bolt the legs to the chassis because there are bolting points on the bottom of the Q7. So they were able to basically mount them together. And the really funny part is they did it for all 3 mix positions. So front of house, monitors, and broadcast. And I thought that was great because in broadcast, sometimes you just want to sit in a chair, right? And lower it down. And sometimes you want to stand up to mix, and same thing goes for front of house. And then there is a really awesome volunteer. Actually, she may be staff on there. So I don't want to say one thing or the other, but very, very short person. And so
she needs 3 boxes.
Yeah. So, but she's got her own setting on the uplift. She just hits the button and console comes down and it works great for her. The funny part was the lighting person got really jealous. So they just got a uplift desk as well with the tabletop. So now they can stand up and sit down and do all that too. But so we're not planning on incorporating legs onto our consoles and height adjustable anytime soon. Also, AI is a really fascinating topic to talk about as far as consoles go. Obviously, it's early on in kind of what apparently the technical term is computer audition, kind of what we would refer to as like computer vision when you want to ask for pictures of cats from Google or whatever, and it's going to do that, right? So computer audition is obviously for computers being able to listen, be able to understand what they're listening to, and there's not a lot of research going into that, right? There's a lot more right now, but early on it was all about computer vision, image recognition, videos, and all that. But now we're starting to see a lot of that. One of the audiotonics companies, so for those who don't keep track of all this stuff, DiGiCo has a parent company called Audiotonics, and then they own other console manufacturers, and they also own Sonable, is one of the companies in there, and they have been doing a lot with AI as far as just mix references about tonality. So having like the plugin you can throw and use in a DAW, and you could use it live with something like Fourier as well. And so being able to be like, hey, I want it to sound like this, and take a reference and be able to put it in there as well. So I think there's really cool stuff coming with that, but it's the early days. And so we're going to see people do some really weird stuff, and it's going to be slow and clunky. And I would say that as an industry, but we'll see where it goes in the future. I think it's going to be quite a few years before you can just be like, give me a Jeff Sandstrom mix, and hit the button, and then it just does it for you. So I think it's going to be a little while.
It's kind of like Blake. He is very early, like in the early stages. He's very slow and clunky right now, but someday I'm going to be able to tell him like, do marketing, and it will just like happen.
Yeah, it'll just happen.
Toby, exactly. That does not compute.
So I know the SD series is still being manufactured. That's still current, but you guys are like
still manufactured. Honestly, it's actually hard for us to manufacture though. Just chipsets, getting a hold of those things, just some of those parts. One of the things that we do as manufacturers that probably nobody cares about is when you start building a product, you need to make sure you can get those parts for X amount of years, right?
I think a lot of people care about this, Ryan. We're still fresh out of 2020.
They do. And that actually showed a lot of the problems with it. But usually you buy a power supply and they're like, hey, we're going to have this available and guarantee to make this for the next 10 years or whatever that is. And so part of what you're doing when you're picking all these products is making sure that you're going to have that serviceability and all that stuff. And one of DiGiCo's, probably their weirdest things is just the return on investment that they're focused on. So like if you bought an SD9 in 2009, like we are still supporting that with software today. We can still get you parts for that. It is still a current console, which is actually probably cool for you guys, because if a church is like, hey, I would like to sell my SD9 and upgrade to a Quantum 225 because it's got some sort of thing I want to take advantage of, nodal processing or spice rack or whatever, you guys would be like, yeah, great. Let's take that 9. Let's make sure it's updated, because that church probably never updated it as well. And you can get parts that are needed for it, and we can support all those products, which is pretty awesome as a manufacturer. I haven't been around a manufacturer in my career that's really had the lifespan and support of products that DiGiCo has done over the years. So SD is still in production, though we are seeing less and less of that right now. Obviously, if you're a church and you were looking at a small form factor console, like less than 96 channels and stuff like that, I realize what I just said there, and I realize there's a lot of churches that are going to be like, that's pretty big. But for DiGiCo, that's generally one of our smallest consoles that we make. Is something like a 225 would make sense, and I would probably steer you towards something with the name Quantum in it. So those have new engines, those have new processors, those have more currently readily available chipsets in there, and we're still the same plan. We're still going to be supporting that product for decades to come on there, which is pretty cool.
And can it take you to Mars? Because he said quantum, he said engines. I mean, he sounds like a spaceship when he describes DiGiCo.
Not that cool.
So you've got the 225 and the 338 that have been out for a bit. And what's the one that's in between them that you guys are coming out with?
The 326.
And is that available yet?
Yep, shipping, you can order it now, do all that. And just so everybody understands, it is just a 338 that is missing a screen and a fader bank. So it was specifically designed for people who just wanted a smaller footprint. So same horsepower, same IO, same all the MADI ports and all the opticore options and all that kind of stuff. It is a full 338. It is just smaller. So if you're a production company, if you're at a church, you're constrained for space, you love the idea of the 338, but 338 is really wide as far as a console goes. And so, being able to just have a more compact footprint. We see churches mixing and matching now. So they'll put like a 338 at front of house, put like a 326 at monitors or something like that, where obviously nobody cares about the monitor engineer. That's just a common thing.
Afterthought.
But being able to, just have him bank through a few more banks, whatever, it's fine. Still got all the horsepower there as well. So that's what we're seeing. And then don't forget, you got the 852 on the high end as well. So,
and are there 852s out there in the wild these days?
Absolutely.
Where can somebody peak at an 852 in real life?
And Toby has Southwest pulled up already. He's trying to get, tickets to this church.
So a lot of Toby's favorite artists are already out with those. So you got like Drake and Usher.
Yes.
And yes. Yeah, I know you're big fan. And so a lot of headlining tours are out and or currently prepping to go out with those. And just so everybody's always wondering, like, do they really need that? Yes. But not in the way that you think. It's not because they're maxing out the channel counts. There will be those and the people who do that. And I just total respect for people that can look at maxing out something like that. We have a great engineer who's a good friend, and he had to take 2 SD7s before we made Quantum.
Wow.
And it's just amazing that, and there were 2 monitor engineers. So they had 4 SD7s just at Monitor World for all the channels and buses and everything they were doing. And so they can do that on a Quantum 852 now, and there are a handful of those. But the vast majority of people who go for that console are not solely about channel count. It is about the redundancy. It is about having 2 fully mirrored PCs and audio engines and power supplies and all of that running concurrently and just being able to hit a button and swap right over to the other one.
Look, being in the Illuminati takes a lot of channels, all right? It's understandable.
It does.
And is there a church out there that has an 852 or is really, seriously thinking about putting one in?
We have 2 that are seriously thinking about putting one in.
Okay. This would be fascinating to see what comes down the line.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you can't tell us on this podcast who they are.
If you told us, that would be kind of a disaster, breaching contract.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that your attempt at a segue, Blake?
I was trying to throw it to you,
Why
Toby.
are you throwing? Why don't you pick up the ball and score, Blake?
Because you keep making fun of me for it. So I thought I was going to throw it to you. And also, you did a better segue than me earlier. Give us a disaster story, Ryan. We love a good moment when everything went wrong in production. How did you address it? How'd you fix it? Did you have to explain it to leadership or the artist afterwards? What happened?
So one of my favorite moments. You mentioned fellowship earlier. So I mixed. I was on the rotation of engineers there, and there's a teaching pastor they had, and 2 times in a row, he was up, and I was mixing, and he went up to speak, and his microphone didn't work. So all of that lands on me. They did.
Was his pack on?
His pack was on.
Okay.
What happened was when things were getting repositioned in the rack and rebuilt, that little mic line switch got toggled. So when they were moving on the back of the wireless, so all of a sudden it was sending out, over 20 dB lower than it should have been. And so you turn up the microphone where it's supposed to be and nothing. And then you're not seeing any gain on the input as well. So it took me a second. I figured it out. We got there. Obviously that throws anybody speaking, let alone, a teaching pastor off, when nobody's hearing them and that's happening. So that was a great learning opportunity. And then the funny part was literally a month later, it was a different problem that was outside of my control, but it was the same teaching pastor and I was the guy mixing again. And then that one was related to another technical issue, but we got it resolved and up and going. And so, we did have like a personal conversation between the 2 of us, on what was going on there, and very gracious and patient for all that. But I learned learned a lot of important lessons. And that is, even if you're, walking into a system that is used regularly, don't ever skip putting that microphone on, listening to it, and doing that.
Yeah.
Just don't
And was
take for granted.
was it David or Joe that was scheduling you for these weeks?
Yeah, it was David.
So do you think he was setting you up and just messing with
No.
you?
I love David. He would not set me up to do that.
Toby, is it time we admit to Ryan that we knew he was going to ghost us in the future?
Yep.
So we, Marty McFlyed our way to the past.
Yep.
When we shot ads at Fellowship, we actually messed with the mics the day he was mixing. So
Well played.
sorry, Ryan. It was reverse revenge.
You know what? I mean, hats off to you, man.
Yeah.
That was some 4D chess there. I'm proud of you guys.
It's kind of like this long con you're playing with me, Blake, around this fake group called Pentatonics that is not a real thing, but you keep it's in a Netflix movie that just came out, like a Christmas movie. And this girl in the movie says, "Oh, I'm going to the Pentatonics concert." And then the character she's talking to said, "Who's Pentatonics?" And I'm like, see, I'm not alone.
Ryan, please tell me you know who Pentatonics is.
I do.
There we go.
I still think this is made up.
I've seen them perform.
Listen, they harmonize so well. They sound so great. And what also would sound really great is a tech takeaway from you, Ryan. Hit us with something that could help any of our churches out there that you would advise them on.
Really just the basics. I mean, there are so many awesome toys and tools out there. And as Toby alluded to earlier, usually distracting. Good things. Equipment is good. It solves problems. We all agree on that. But just going back to the basics, at CFX, a month ago, something like that. I can't remember what it was, somewhere around that time. I was on a panel with some production directors just talking about workflows for audio volunteers. And the stuff that we went through and they spoke about, you could just see like tech directors in the room, like wide-eyed, giving that quizzical look. And it was all this stuff that I just took for granted. And I was like, oh, okay. And most of that was boring things like documentation, making sure there are stage plots and inputs are labeled and things make sense on the infrastructure side. So my takeaway would be like, bring somebody in and have them mix with like giving them the normal information you give, like somebody outside of your normal team, and see where the problems are. Be like, and we all have excuses for why we skipped channel 17 on that snake, right? Because, it broke years ago and we don't really know and nobody stopped to fix it. And, that floor box has a faulty jack or whatever, like all that stuff happens in every install in every church out there. The other thing that I would probably throw in here if there was like a part B is there are a ton of production touring audio engineers out in the world. A lot of them are not busy on Sundays, and they probably live in your cities. You would probably be amazed at how many around. Now, yes, they do leave on tours and they're gone for 3 months and all that kind of stuff. But Matt Larson was actually the one to originally bring up this concept, and I've loved it. And I think churches should be taking advantage of that. And that is, find those people, hire those people to come in. And you would be thinking, yeah, I know you got to get budget approval to pay a guy to come in, but have them teach your people. Yes, they're probably going to use inappropriate language in the church, for the training. Like they're probably going to wear a, Megadeth shirt or whatever it is.
Are they going to say heck?
Toby, now I have to believe that.
That's true. And yeah, that might happen. But here are two things that are going to come from it. One, your team is going to learn something from a veteran touring professional on the road. Two, you are taking somebody who's touring on the road and you're bringing them into church. And that may be their only, invite to a church and get to see it. So I think it's really cool from both directions. Just being able to bring in somebody that's got expertise that can help train your team, be another voice to help people, understand these things. And then also as a great way for you to reach out and just, I don't know if most churches think about it that way. We think about just the normal, how do we get the normal person in on a Sunday that's, got, teaches soccer and, has all those things going on in their life with kids. But, there's production industry people out there who are not coming to church. And they might not of their own free will, but if you're paying them, they would probably come. And what a great way to get them introduced to your church and to your community. And, hopefully God can use that to move things forward in their life.
Ryan, I really love that. That's really beautiful. And, just sprinkle a little bit of holy water on them as they come in and you'll be good to go.
Absolutely.
I was worried that his tech takeaway for a church of any size was invest in a DiGiCo 852.
Well,
I did a presentation years ago, and it was like right when the 852 came out, and it was entitled "Why Every Church Needs an 852." It was a joke, just in case you're wondering. But yes, we understand that's not for everybody.
That would be a little awkward to do as your whole presentation, but it wouldn't be awkward to do during the plug segment of the podcast. So, do you want to plug anything over at DiGiCo World?
Yeah, definitely buy a DiGiCo, whatever size church you are, whatever budget you have.
Whether it's from DiGiCo's website or ChurchGear's.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was the thing we just said, right? They can go buy a 14-year-old SD10 and it's going to be running the same software as the Quantums are running. Now, handful of less features because they have different engines in them, but yeah, same software and same functionality. So yeah, go buy one from ChurchGear, buy one from us, all good. So yeah, I mean, plugins, or plugs, I should say, and we can plug plugins. Fourier is a new company that DiGiCo bought. And so they're a startup. We just have one product out now, and that is a server to run any VST3 plugin. And that would be whether you should use it live or not, it will run it. So we've seen people use these at broadcast for their churches where they need like look ahead limiters and things like that are 15 to 20 milliseconds, stuff you would never run live, right? So they can run those things instead of having to be in a Pro Tools in the box, kind of setup, which so many churches have done because they wanted a particular sound. And I totally get that. But this allows you to take those same tools and run them live while you're doing it. So you can run anything from, Wave's amazing plugins, pretty much any VST3 out there, which is really awesome. So that's just called the Fourier Transform. It's a 2RU box, sits on a Dante network, and you take your same existing licenses you already have, load in the machine, and there you go.
Toby, I'm going to buy one of those and plug it into you and see if we can get an upgrade.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I don't think you can upgrade this, though, Blake.
That's true. Perfection cannot be perfected. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you finally making time for us and also handling our grilling of you.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Really appreciate you guys and what you do.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the ChurchGear Studios.
Toby, since we spent so much time trying to get Ryan, literally more than any other guest, does that actually make him the most valuable guest we've ever had?
It's possible. I was going to ask you, do you think he was worth the wait?
I think he was. He really delivered on some funny stuff, and he actually had some really smart things. I felt like I actually learned, which, that means it was pretty good.
Yeah. And I feel like, if somebody's going to share an episode, maybe this is the one they share. They're like, gosh, these ChurchGear guys waited over a year for this episode, so we better share it.
Yeah, that means it's going to be good. So send it to a buddy and say, hey, this is going to make you better, and listen to it as we, man, I'm flumbling here.
And I'll just sum it all up with, Blake, I'm hoping that one day you'll end up being worth the wait.